Prince William opening up in a rare and candid conversation about supporting both his wife Catherine and his father King Charles in their cancer journeys.
Turning now to Prince William speaking out about King Charles's cancer diagnosis for the first time.
We heard about his cancer diagnosis, a man in his late 70s, that there may be problems during his ongoing treatment, there may be blips.
How do you face it when the silence finally breaks and the truth you've feared for so long comes rushing in like a storm? When a son must stand before the world and speak the unspeakable truth about his father. The headline flashed across every screen in Britain like a shockwave nobody was ready for. Prince William, the future king.
Conservationist, father, and future king. Prince William is Britain's most popular royal after his grandmother, the Queen.
Had just confirmed what millions had whispered, but prayed wasn't true. His father's battle, the one fought quietly behind palace walls, had reached a point where hope had to make room for reality. The statement was brief, composed, but the weight behind it pressed down on an entire nation.
For the first time since his father's cancer diagnosis, Prince William is back to work and addressing his family's health scares.
Within moments, flowers began to appear at the palace gates. Cameras turned toward windows that stayed firmly shut, and the world understood that something irreversible had begun. This wasn't just another royal update, this was the beginning of the end. Stay with us as we uncover the moments that led to this heartbreaking confirmation, the silent struggles, the private pain, and what comes next for a family facing goodbye under the world's watchful eyes. Prince William's heartbreaking confirmation that shook the nation. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Royal announcements usually come wrapped in formal language, carefully timed, vetted by advisors and lawyers. But when Prince William stepped up to that podium at a charity gathering in central London, something was different. His face carried a heaviness that no amount of royal training could hide. The room, filled with donors and dignitaries, fell into an eerie hush as he adjusted the microphone. Then came the words that would ripple across continents. My father has shown incredible courage through this illness, but we've now reached a stage where we must accept that some battles aren't meant to be won. They're only meant to be faced with grace. The word incurable hung in the air like smoke.
There are new bombshell claims today from royal insiders who say King Charles's cancer is incurable and he will likely die with the disease.
People froze mid-motion. Cameras clicked furiously. Social media erupted before he even left the stage. This wasn't a palace press release. This was a son, speaking from the rawest place a son can speak from, telling the truth his father could no longer avoid. Outside Buckingham Palace, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Crowds began forming within the hour, clutching candles, flowers, and phones, streaming the news live.
Well, a vast sea of floral tributes are spreading along the parks around Buckingham Palace as well-wishers gather to pay their respects.
Tourists stood beside lifelong Londoners, strangers united by a shared sense of loss. The mood wasn't panicked, but it was heavy, somber, like the air before a storm that everyone knows is coming. Reporters lined the gates, their voices low and respectful, narrating a moment that felt bigger than any single person. This was history unfolding in real time. Across the Atlantic, international broadcasters replayed William's statement on loop, dissecting every word, every pause, every flicker of emotion. News anchors in New York, Paris, Sydney, all echoed the same question. How much time does the king have left? No one had an answer, but everyone understood that the clock was ticking louder now. For months, the palace had tried to control the narrative. Statements were optimistic, vague, carefully constructed to avoid alarm. The king is resting. Treatment is progressing. He remains in good spirits. But behind those words, a different story was unfolding. Insiders whispered about canceled meetings, shorter public appearances.
The king had scheduled an ongoing medical treatment for cancer, required a short observation in hospital. His Majesty's afternoon engagements were postponed.
Moments where Charles had to sit when he used to stand. Those closest to him saw the toll: weight loss, the fatigue that no amount of rest could cure. And now, William had pulled back the curtain, not out of cruelty, but out of love. Because pretending wasn't fair anymore. Not to his father, not to the people who cared. The truth, however painful, was finally out. The nation that had watched Charles wait 70 years to wear the crown.
King Charles waited for. Charles ascends to the throne at 73, the longest wait in British history.
Now faced the reality that his reign might be measured not in decades, but in days. King Charles's health journey from strength to struggle. To understand how we arrived at this moment, you have to go back, way back. Before Charles was king, before he was even seen as fragile. There was a time when he was the picture of strength, athletic, energetic, stubborn in the best way. In his younger years, Charles lived for polo. He'd wake before dawn, ride hard through Scottish moors, spend hours in the saddle without complaint. Those who knew him then described a man who refused to quit even when his body begged him to. Bruises, sprains, falls from horses, none of it stopped him. He carried that toughness like armor, a quiet pride that said royals don't show weakness. They endure, they push through. And for decades, he did exactly that. But time has a way of humbling even the strongest. The first crack appeared in 1998 when knee surgery became unavoidable. It was minor, routine even, but it marked the first time the public saw him as vulnerable. Then came the hernia in 2003, another reminder that age spares no one, not even princes. Each time, Charles bounced back quickly, made jokes with the nurses, waved at photographers, and returned to work like nothing happened. But privately, those close to him said something shifted. He started thinking differently about his body, about mortality, about what it meant to carry the weight of duty when your own frame was starting to buckle. There were other scares too. A growth removed from his nose, concussions from polo. Each one a small reminder that the body he'd pushed so hard for so long was beginning to push back. Then, the pandemic hit. When news broke in 2020 that Charles had tested positive for COVID,
Prince Charles had tested positive for COVID and is self-isolating.
The nation collectively held its breath. He was in his 70s, high risk, but his case turned out mild. He recovered at home in Scotland, working remotely, taking calls, reading briefings. To the public, it looked like proof he was invincible. But those around him noticed the subtle changes. He tired more easily. Public events grew shorter. He leaned on aids more than before. It wasn't alarming yet, just different. Looking back now, those were the early warning signs that something deeper was brewing beneath the surface. The man who once rode horses for hours now struggled to stand through 30-minute ceremonies. In early 2024, the palace announced Charles would undergo treatment for an enlarged prostate. The transparency was unusual, even praised. People appreciated the honesty. The procedure went smoothly. He smiled for the cameras on his way out of the hospital. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. Follow-up tests revealed something else, something that changed everything. In February, the word cancer entered the conversation. The palace confirmed a diagnosis but withheld specifics. Speculation ran wild.
We've received breaking news from Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the King has been diagnosed with cancer.
What type? How serious? How long had they known? The answers never came, but the pattern that followed became all too familiar. Hospital visits, short stays, optimistic updates that felt less convincing each time. And slowly, undeniably, the King began to fade before the world's eyes. Each photograph showed a thinner frame. Each public appearance grew briefer. The man who had waited so long to be king was losing the strength to fulfill the role he'd spent a lifetime preparing for. The royal family's silent struggle behind palace walls. Prince William never wanted to become king this soon. Nobody does. The crown is supposed to come later, after a long life lived, after decades of preparation. But life doesn't follow scripts, and now William finds himself in the impossible position of being both a son watching his father decline and a future monarch preparing to step into shoes that still feel too large. Those close to him describe a man caught between two worlds. In meetings, he's calm, focused, ready. But behind closed doors, the grief shows, the tight jaw, the long silences, the moments where he stares out windows, lost in thoughts he can't share with anyone except his wife. He's trying to balance being the Prince of Wales and the son of a dying king, one aide said quietly. That's a weight few can imagine. Catherine has been his anchor through all of this. While managing her own health challenges and raising 3 children, she's carried herself with a grace that echoes Queen Elizabeth. Quiet strength, steady presence.
Getting tips from Her Majesty, keeping it real with her kids, and stepping into the spotlight. After years in the public eye, here's proof that Kate Middleton is ready to be queen.
Never seeking attention, but always there when needed. Her composure during Charles's illness hasn't gone unnoticed. People see her as the steady hand that will guide the next era. She represents something the monarchy desperately needs right now: relatability without losing dignity, warmth without losing respect. And Charles himself has reportedly said more than once how proud he is of her, how she embodies everything he hoped the next generation would become. In private conversations, he's called her the steady star of what comes next. Queen Camilla, too, has stepped into a role few expected. For years, she was the subject of scrutiny, criticism, and judgment. But in Charles's most vulnerable moments, she's been the one constant. She's taken on more royal duties, hosted events, met dignitaries, all while caring for her husband in ways the public doesn't see. Reading to him, praying with him, making sure he rests. Her devotion has softened even the harshest critics. People now see her not as the controversial figure from decades past.
A woman who's evolved in the public eye quietly in the background, an image of almost pantomime villain to queen.
But as a woman who loves her husband deeply and is doing everything she can to ease his pain. She sits by his bedside for hours. She holds his hand during treatments. She's become the strength he draws on when he runs dry. Then there's Princess Anne, the workhorse of the family. She continues performing hundreds of engagements every year, embodying the kind of duty her mother lived by. Behind the scenes, insiders say Anne has become William's unofficial mentor, guiding him through the complexities of what's coming. Her work ethic has made her irreplaceable during this uncertain time. She doesn't seek headlines. She just shows up, does the work, and keeps the machine running. That's the kind of royalty Charles always admired. Service without fanfare, duty without drama. While others might crumble under the pressure, Anne simply tightens her schedule and carries on. But one shadow looms over this entire story. Prince Harry. The king's younger son lives thousands of miles away, estranged from the institution that shaped him. His relationship with his father has been complicated, painful, and public. Yet sources say Charles still longs for reconciliation. He speaks often of his 2 sons, 2 paths, 1 hope. When Harry finally visited after the diagnosis was confirmed, it was brief.
Prince Harry has spoken to the King about his cancer diagnosis. He will be travelling to the UK to see His Majesty.
Less than an hour. But those who witnessed it said emotions ran high. Whatever words were exchanged stayed private. But there's a sense that even Harry feels the pull of duty again. He's torn, one insider revealed. He wants to be there, but he also knows his presence could overshadow the moment. Whether he returns in time, whether he finds peace with his family before it's too late, remains one of the most painful questions hanging over this story. Some believe reconciliation is still possible. Others fear the divide has grown too wide to bridge, even in the face of death. What happens next? As Britain prepares for the inevitable. In the days following William's confirmation, Britain seemed to pause. Life went on, of course. People went to work, trains ran, shops opened. But underneath the routine, there was a collective awareness that something monumental was unfolding. Vigils continued nightly outside royal residences. Candles flickered in the wind. Strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, saying nothing. Because what was there to say? The Prime Minister visited privately, a meeting described as profound but brief. Afterward, a statement confirmed the king remained informed of state affairs, but word spread quietly that the conversation had been less about governance and more about legacy, about what endures when one man's time ends. Charles reportedly spoke softly but firmly. "The crown endures," he said. "It always has, and it always will." Inside Windsor, Charles spent his days surrounded by books, letters, and the soft hum of classical music. His dogs lay near the window. Camilla read poetry aloud. Visitors described a man at peace, not through denial, but through acceptance. "He knows the world will carry on," one aide said quietly. "He just hopes it carries on kindly." That sentiment captured everything about Charles's reign. Short, yes, but driven by compassion, by a desire to modernize without losing meaning, to serve without seeking glory. He had made his peace with time. He knew the world would move forward without him. He just wanted it to remember what mattered. Kindness, service, love. At Balmoral, the family gathered one last time. William arrived with his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. They played on the lawns, unaware of the weight their parents carried. Charles insisted on showing them the gardens, wanting them to remember him this way. Alive, curious, present. That evening, William and his father spoke privately for nearly 2 hours. No cameras, no courtiers, just father and son, saying everything that needed to be said. When William emerged, tears lined his eyes, but his voice was steady. He said his father was proud of him, a confidant recalled. He said everything that needed to be said. It was the kind of conversation no son wants to have, but also the kind every son needs. The media shifted from speculation to reflection. Documentaries replayed clips of Charles planting trees, visiting flood victims, sketching in notebooks. The narrative wasn't about a fading king. It was about a man.
King Charles is planting a seed for a greener future. On Friday, the monarch planted a lime tree in the Buckingham Palace garden,
Whose lifelong passions had finally found their place in history. He spoke of climate change before it was fashionable, one commentator noted. His reign may be short, but his impact will be lasting. Public sentiment mirrored that respect. Even critics found themselves moved by the dignity of it all, the courage to face mortality without spectacle. For a brief moment, Britain felt united again, not by politics or pageantry, but by empathy. Within the palace, preparations intensified. Operation Menai Bridge, the code name for the king's passing, was reviewed quietly. Speeches drafted, logistics rehearsed. Yet staff insisted there were still moments of light. "He laughs," one said. "He tells stories about his childhood, about his mother." There's a sense of continuity. Even in decline, he reminds us of where we've come from. The Archbishop of Canterbury visited frequently, leading small private services. They sang hymns together, the sound barely rising above the whisper of wind outside. Afterward, Charles reportedly said, "If my reign ends tomorrow, I'll leave knowing we did our best." It was confession and benediction rolled into one. Autumn arrived softly, bringing with it one last image that would linger in history. King Charles sat in his study, sunlight spilling across the room, a faint, knowing smile resting on his face. On the polished desk lay framed reminders of Queen Elizabeth's calm presence captured in one photo, his son's innocent laughter frozen in another. The photograph spoke in silence, a man suspended between generations, between duty and the eternal unknown. It graced the front pages under words like grace until the end. Yet what people truly saw wasn't the monarch. They saw a father reflecting on legacy, a husband remembering love, and a man who carried the crown not for glory, but for service and faith. Then one evening, the palace gates closed earlier than usual. A hush settled over Windsor as cars slipped quietly through the mist. Family members were summoned without ceremony, their faces pale with understanding. No announcement came that night, but by morning, the Prime Minister appeared before cameras, dressed in a dark suit, his expression solemn. His Majesty remains comfortable and is surrounded by his family. The nation didn't need further words. Church bells tolled, conversations halted mid-sentence, streets fell still as if time itself held its breath. The air felt heavy, caught between two reigns, between a king's final hours and a son's inevitable dawn. Across Britain, strangers exchanged silent glances. It was happening. The king who had waited 70 years for his destiny was now facing its end, while his son, ready or not, stepped into history's light. Somewhere within Windsor's quiet, echoing halls, a father met his son's gaze for what felt like the final time, not as king and heir, but as two men bound by blood, legacy, and the silent understanding that one story was closing while another was just beginning. At that moment, titles didn't matter. What remained was love raw, unspoken, and eternal. The weight of a lifetime's duty seemed to pass between them, carried not in words, but in a single look. Charles saw in William the continuation of everything he had fought for: the endurance of the crown, the faith of a nation, the heartbeat of a family that had weathered centuries of change. Outside, Windsor stood still, holding its breath, as history quietly turned a page. And when the next dawn broke, it wasn't just a new reign that began. It was a reminder that true royalty is found in grace, not power. Sometimes, a story isn't just heard, it's felt. If this one touched your heart, if it made you pause and think about the fragile space between duty, love, and loss, then take a moment and let it sink in. Behind every crown, there's a heart that beats with pain, hope, and courage, just like ours. And if you felt that too, then hit that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that being human is the greatest strength of all. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the beauty hidden in struggle. Because in the end, it isn't the crown or the throne that defines greatness. It's the grace we carry when life tests us. The strength to rise with dignity even when everything falls apart. And sometimes, in those moments of quiet pain and courage, we discover who we truly are.